Ever since I did the video ranking the Super Paper Mario chapter bosses, I kinda realized that I never did it for the 1000-Year Door. Which, I mean, I know why. It's because this game has over 30 bosses. But since I came up with the idea of just, hey, only rank the chapter bosses, I guess it's perfect for the 1000-Year Door because this game has some really good chapter bosses. So it's gonna be really enjoyable to actually rank these and actually talk about something really positive again. So, welcome to my chapter boss ranking for the 1000-Year Door, and let's get into it. When you look at every single chapter boss in the game, you just realize why in the world is Blooper even a chapter boss. Now obviously it kind of makes sense, he's the chapter boss for the prologue, but since this is the prologue, you're only going to have Goombella's base attacks, your base attacks, Power Smash, and Sweet Treat, which means that there's not going to be much variety that you're going to be attacking with. And also, Blooper's attacks aren't really filled with variety. All he really does is slap you with his tentacles or inkjet you, which obviously makes sense, he's a Blooper, but at the end of the day, it's still not creative. But I will say that I do like the concept of you having to destroy his tentacles for him actually to fall down. Again, it's something that the developers did to make the boss a bit more creative, even though they were just trying to make this boss very simple. And they did that for it being the first boss. They did well in that regard. But since you're comparing it to these really good chapter bosses in this game, it obviously was going to land at number 10. Who really didn't expect this? Magnus von Grapple, definitely not a bad boss like Blooper, but, I mean, he's just boring. It's just fighting Lord Crump in my opinion, which is obviously why he's this low. It's very underwhelming for this being a chapter boss. Maybe if it was like Cortez's situation, where you fight Crump after the actual chapter boss of this place, that would have been pretty cool. But Lord Crump being the chapter boss itself just feels very underwhelming. It just doesn't make sense to me too much. And that's definitely my biggest problem with it. But I think the reason it's above Blooper is because this feels like an actual chapter boss in my opinion. This feels like, okay, at least it makes sense that this is actually a chapter boss, unlike Blooper. And also his attacks are kinda boring. It's definitely not as boring as Blooper's, but they're definitely more boring compared to other chapter bosses. So at the end of the day, Magnus von Grapple isn't a bad boss, but it's definitely more boring compared to other chapter bosses in this game. Magnus von Grapple 2.0. There's a reason you're hearing the exact same music, and it's because at the end of the day, this fight is just very boring, because one, you've already fought a version like this, aka Magnus von Grapple 1.0, and yes, it's better, don't get me wrong, and that's why it's above. It's actually a really good upgrade, but it's an upgrade. It's not a remake of the fight, and that's why I still think it's very boring and underwhelming. I think you actually should have fought Grotus in this chapter. It definitely would have been more interesting than just fighting Lord Crump again. I feel like this is like the 4th or 5th time that you've fought him in this game, which just makes him a bit redundant to fight at this point. Again, not a bad boss, but definitely underwhelming. This feels very low for Sir Grotus, but I definitely have some problems with this fight. First things first, I don't like the theme of it at all. I will say that it fits, but I really don't like how it sounds. It actually sounds pretty irritating. And the other thing is that this is very underwhelming. And again, they made this fight underwhelming on purpose to give more value to the Shadow Queen fight, which, let me tell you, it definitely did. But that still hurts this fight at the end of the day. And I will say that this fight has the exact same opinion of mine with Count Bleck, the Count Bleck fight, because they both are underwhelming on purpose, even though they are good fights at the end of the day. But this game just overall has better chapter bosses, so that's why that Grotus is at the lower half, where Count Bleck is at the top half. Check out my Super Paper Mario chapter boss ranking if you haven't seen it after this video. I'll shoot an info card. But yeah, Sir Grotus, it's not that great. All these chapter bosses now have some really interesting stuff in them, and all are really enjoyable, so ranking them after this was really difficult. But the first one that we gotta talk about is Hooktail. And this is the Chapter 1 chapter boss. That's ridiculous to think about, that this is from Chapter 1. But at the end of the day, this is still a really good chapter boss. And it's because it has really unique ideas, even though it's still a simple fight. First off, he eats the audience, which gives you more intimidation, and also it makes the boss fight last longer. He also has the briberies after you damage him a bit, which are pretty funny, because he bribes you with coins, with a really cool badge, and then smelling the under of his feet. I mean, I can't really say that if they smell good or not, because I haven't smelt them. But I'm just gonna go on a whim and say that they don't smell good. And, I mean, after that, again, he eats the audience, you get more intimidation, and then the real boss fight actually occurs. The other thing as well is that this boss fight is pretty difficult for where you are in the game. It does a decent amount of damage, and, I mean, he has a decent amount of health. But he doesn't have that much health if you find the cricket badge. If you find the cricket badge, then you're golden, because it lowers his attack by half, which is so critical in this game, because you don't really have that much HP or FP this early in the game. And, I mean, they still hint it by you, unless you don't read that note from the dead Koopa. At that point, then you're probably screwed. You're probably not going to have a great time with this fight. But for me personally, this is a very good boss fight, and I really like replaying it every single time I replay the Thousand Year Door. This is a really good fight. I really like Macho Grubba. He takes every little good thing about Chapter 3 and puts it into one fight. He doesn't really make the chapter really better, but that's probably why he's at number 5 instead of anything higher. He's still a great fight though. But at the end of the day, he, again, takes everything from Chapter 3 and puts it into one fight. He gets the story element correct. He is the reporter. You don't really expect him to be the villain until you actually are champion, and he just starts talking about really weird things. Then you have, of course, the battle style. It's a very simple battle style. He's just on a stage, he's attacking you with melee stuff, and he's raising his attack. He isn't really doing anything too unfair, which is really fun to think about, because again, this is still Glitzville, and this is the place of fighting. So him doing really simple attacks really makes this fight great. But at the end of the day, this fight is still great, but it doesn't really innovate and make the chapter better like the other 4 bosses that we have left. This boss is just a really good boss. Here we go, this is a really good fight. Cortez is so fun, and he really makes the chapter enjoyable. Before this, I feel like the chapter was just good, but once you get to here, this is a really fun fight. First off, Cortez's attacks, while pretty easy to dodge, which we'll talk about that a bit later, his attacks are really cool and there's multiple of them. I really like that, and it makes the boss a bit harder. Also, we just have that he has so many stages in his boss fight, which means that you may think that he has very little health at the start, but since he keeps changing, he actually has a lot of health, which is very cool. I like that. But at the end of the day, the best thing about this fight is his theme. I mean, his theme is just so good. I mean, it's not the best theme in the game. I think it's in the top 3, but not the best. But it sounds so cool. I really like the banjo incorporated into it because, I mean, that's a really integral part of this chapter. But at the end of the day, I keep saying at the end of the day, whatever. At the end of the day, this fight's biggest problem is that I feel like I can time when I need to actually dodge attacks. Because, I don't know why, I feel like that there's just this time where it's easy. Where you could just tell, you have an instinct that this is where he's gonna attack. And I think it definitely makes the boss easier than it is. I think that this is probably one of the easier bosses in the game, even though it has a lot of stages and a lot of health. But because of that, I feel like it's only at number 4. Also, I mean, the fact that the top 3 bosses are just amazing probably also put this at number 4. Smorg is such a good boss, and I realized the first time I fought it, I was having a lot of fun fighting it, but I didn't realize why. But I think I have 3 reasons why, but I don't think that's all it is. I just can't really find the other reasons in me. 1, it's the theme. I really love the theme in this fight. It's actually my favorite theme in this game. The second thing is that he attacks multiple times. Thirdly, I actually have a fourth reason, I just thought of it while looking at the screen. He doesn't have all of his weak points exposed, which is really nice. And fourthly, you see all of your fellow, I guess, train mates, I don't know, your fellow train mates inside of the Smorg, them capturing him, which is really threatening. And at the end of the day, this fight reminds me of Elder Princess Shroob. That's probably why I have so much fun with this fight, because I feel like this fight is the Elder Princess Shroob of the 1,000-Year Door, which is probably why I rank this fight so high. But since I don't have all the reasons why I enjoy this fight, I couldn't put it at number 1 or number 2. It has to land here at number 3. The only fight we're talking about on this list is the last fight you have with Dupless, and it still deserves to be number 2 because of it. First off, you say his name, which is a very creative way to actually weaken him. The second thing is that, well, you're fighting your partners. That's probably my biggest strength about this fight, because other fights when you just fight yourself, I remember Super Mario has that with the Pit of 100 Trials. You have to fight yourself as a shadow. But the thing about this fight that makes it interesting is that you're not only fighting yourself, you're fighting your partners alongside you, which is really cool. I also like that Vivian leaves you for the fight for a bit and then she comes back, because she isn't really sure if she wants to fight with you, which is pretty cool. I like that. It's a bit of character development. And at the end of the day, this is a really fun fight, and I guess the attacks are kind of easy to dodge because it's your attacks. You can see how long they're actually going to take. But they're so creative that this fight was gonna land at number 2. It's just such a creative and fun fight that it instantly was gonna shoot up to number 2. And that's honestly how I feel about it. Again, it might sound genocidal, but I think the main reason why this fight is so cool is that you're fighting your partners, not just yourself, which sets it differently to just other copy fights, like Dark Link from Ocarina of Time. This time, you're not just fighting yourself, you're fighting your partners alongside you, which thus makes it my favorite all-time copy boss. What did you guys really expect me to put at number 1, aside from the Shadow Queen? It's a difficult fight, her attacks are pretty difficult to dodge, and even if you dodge them, they do a lot of damage, and, I mean, there really isn't much to this fight that makes it really bad. I mean, the theme's amazing. What is there really to talk about? This fight is just fun. It's the final boss. What did you expect? I mean, what else is there? I guess that we can talk about people wishing you really well with the crystal stars that weakens her. I guess I like that. But at the end of the day, I just like her attacks. I just like how much health she has. And just like that, you get to use every single one of your abilities to your best. And that's why I love this fight. Thank you guys for watching. I mean, if you lasted this long and you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? You might as well subscribe. I'm a small channel, so it'd really help. And at the end of the day, like I said at the other parts of the video, at the end of the day, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Why do I say at the end of the day so much?